Ladies and gentlemen, it is now 6:45 PM, and a quorum of members is present, so the meeting of the Board of Education of the School District of New Berlin is called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Crosby?
Here.
Mr. Helmer?
Here.
Ms. Connick?
Here.
Mr. Kurth?
Here.
Ms. Schultz?
Here.
Mr. Seidel?
Here.
Ms. Spindler?
Here.
I would entertain a motion to recess to closed session.
Madam President, I move to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, 1C, E, and F of the Wisconsin statutes to consider A, the approval of closed session minutes of August 28th, and B, employment, performance, and compensation matters pertaining to staff.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Seidel. Please call the roll.
Mr. Kurth?
Yes.
Mr. Seidel?
Yes.
Ms. Crosby?
Yes.
Mr. Helmer?
Yes.
Ms. Connick?
Yes.
Ms. Schultz?
Yes.
Ms. Spindler?
Yes.
We're moving into closed session, and we return to open session around 7 o'clock. It is now 7:04, and we are returning from closed session into open session. In recognition of the serious and important nature of our efforts here, we will join in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. For all those who are able, please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now, as we prepare for the meeting with a moment of silence, let us also recognize that today marks the 22nd anniversary of the terrorist attacks on 9/11. Please remember those who lost their lives and those whose lives were forever changed. This is a public meeting of the Board of Education. Prior to this meeting, notice was given to the public last Friday by providing the agenda to the city library. The agenda was also posted on the district website. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Journal Sentinel, the Waukesha Freeman, and the Waukesha Now, all of which have filed requests for all public notices. Do we have anybody for privilege of the floor this evening? No. Okay. And then, just a little message here, welcome back to school, everybody. It's been the first day of classes last week, and a warm welcome back to all the students and staff. We hope you had a fun and relaxing summer, and best wishes for the new year. And now the superintendent's update.
I wanted to touch on a few things. The first thing is community members should be receiving in their mailboxes our 2022-2023 annual report. There are a lot of things we certainly should be proud of that's in there. Some great accomplishments on behalf of our students and staff. In light of the fact that our budget hearing and annual meeting is in 2 weeks, I did want to point out that on page 16 of the report itself talks about the financial stability of our school district. Specifically, wanted to touch on a couple different things which I've touched on before. I want to mention that we continue to have tax levy decreases almost on an annual basis. And I want to clarify a couple things. One is that we are still, or at least this board as of late, has maximized the levy amount that we are allowed to or allocated per the financial or the funding aid formula. While maybe 15 plus years ago that was something that previous boards decided to do, is not maximize the levy amount. In recent times, this board has. Now, one may wonder, well, how is it that we continue to decrease our taxes and our tax rate in New Berlin? So, for example, we are anticipating an approximately $190 tax decrease on the school side of the bill for the upcoming school year on a $250,000 home. Well, it's because of a couple different things. A, the funding formula. B, our enrollment. And then C, our property values. And our property values actually continue to go up. So for example, the fact that we are actually receiving a lot more state aid this year also helps us in that capacity as well. So we are doing a lot of things right. I think the fact that the board prepaid some debt also puts us in a really good financial position. We also, up until a couple years ago, started Fund 41. And we also actually highlight Fund 41 in the annual report. Fund 41, as stated in the report, is money levied into the fund that cannot be transferred to other funds and enhances rather than replaces the regular maintenance budget. As the board outlined at their last board meeting, the board's goal for the upcoming school year, previously it had been $1 million allocated in Fund 41. The board's goal is actually now up to $1.25 million or $1.2 million. And in fact, we've actually budgeted over $2 million in Fund 41 for the upcoming school year. So as I whittle this conversation down, while we did have, for example, a chiller issue at Eisenhower last week, it was simply that. It was an issue with a gasket in the actual chiller itself that leaked. Unfortunately, when you've got a 13-year-old, which again, in our opinion, is reasonably aged chiller, but when it's functioning at a very high level during a very hot time, you may experience some issues. Once we identified where the leak was, it was fixed immediately. We have the money allocated for that in our budget to do so. Quite honestly, we actually even have the money budget allocated, if needed, to replace the entire thing. But fortunately, that's not the case. So it was fixed, it was addressed, and we're back to business as usual. We do apologize for the warm classrooms, but I think we were all, even here, dealing with that over in the district office alongside our students and staff. The next thing that I wanted to point out is that we are working with with city officials on the future of Hickory Grove. We have been in contact with them. It sounds like they are actually still in some planning phases as it relates to Hickory Grove that they've identified. I do think that it would be beneficial for us, myself, and others and city officials to sit down and chat and find out where things are at, because I do think it could be beneficial for not only on behalf of the school district or the city, on behalf of our community members, but also our taxpayers. Now, again, what does that mean? I'm not sure. I'll continue to bring some information back to the board as it becomes available to me. Finally, we are addressing transportation issues. As mentioned, we have a lot of construction, probably more construction than I've ever seen in my career here in New Berlin, that happens to go through two main thoroughfares of the city of New Berlin. They are county projects, but certainly impacts our transportation and our busing. And so communication is going to be the key, not only from the county, but also the city, with the school district, with the bus company, and then eventually the parents and the students. And I think so far we're doing okay, given the fact that it's been the first week of school, but we'll continue to monitor that as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the notice and approval of minutes of the board meeting on August 14th. Are there any items that should be pulled out for separate consideration? Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Seidel to approve the consent agenda as presented. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. On to our regular agenda. First up on that is the employment services update.
So I'll have Dr. Nicole Jones come up. Nicole does a couple of updates for you throughout the year. One is typically done immediately after the end of the school year, where she shares out information related to staff survey results and so on. This time of year, she's reporting out on things that have occurred over the course of the summer and kind of where we're at and what our plans are heading into the school year. Nicole.
Okay, so we'll launch right into it. We usually typically start this report with our review of our voluntary resignations. And actually really great news to share on this front. So for the first time since we've been recording it, maybe even prior to 16-17, we only had 2 employees leave us to go to another district. And then overall, we had a total of 12 voluntary resignations. Voluntary meaning they went of their own free will. There were other resignations that were kind of in lieu of some other things, but these are voluntary resignations. So you saw 2 to another district, 3 relocated, meaning usually their spouses, their significant others were moving somewhere farther away. Some are taking time to raise a family, and we had a couple career changers, either becoming a dean or administration or something along those lines. And then just the 1 retirement. And then even better news, our turnover rate was the lowest it's been since we've been recording it, in the probably slightly before 15-16. The data is a little bit muddy before that, but you can see we've had our lowest voluntary turnover rate in many years, and we are also well below the local turnover rate average. And the data is pretty current, up to date, and most school districts in southeastern Wisconsin did submit their data, so that's about where it's going to hover. Actually, I think that's an old slide. It's actually at 6.10. I did update it on my other presentation. So 6.10 is the local average, and we are at 3.5. So very proud of that number as well. And even more to celebrate. So the Wisconsin Policy Forum put out an article about teacher turnover in the state of Wisconsin. And in the article, it was a lot of doom and gloom with teacher turnover rates, teachers leaving the profession, continuing to climb. It reached 16% on average. And our rate continues to go down. So we're seeing just the opposite happen in our district. So we're really proud of the work that we're doing here to retain our educators and our staff. And again, like I said, our lowest turnover rate that we've seen to date since we've been recording the data. Okay, oh, sorry. Next, we're going to launch into our exit interview feedback. So last year, we started using our program Qualtrics, which is the same program that we use for our annual staff survey. So we did this exit interview last year as well, so it's going to be very similar to what we presented last year at this time. And we had about 20 folks participate in our exit interview process. We did do some that were in person as well. The questions are slightly different than this, but this is data from our Qualtrics survey. So you can see the various reasons. And again, this survey, I should mention, this is not just licensed educators. This includes all of our staff, so it includes some support staff, as well as licensed educators across the board. So you can see the various reasons why folks stated that they were leaving. And then you can see how well did your job fit, or was your role fit your skill set? Generally, very positive responses to that question. How reasonable or unreasonable was the workload that was given to you? Most said moderately reasonable, with a few other responses kind of in between, but again, not entirely, mostly positive responses there as well. How good or bad was the overall quality of the physical environment? So this is like the cleanliness of the space, the access to resources in the space that you're working with. Yeah. 20 respondents, yes. Mm-hmm. Yep, and again, moderately good, extremely good. So in terms of the spaces that everyone has access to and is working within, generally positive reviews of our building spaces. And again, this is across the district, across multiple job groups. Fairly or unfairly, how fairly or unfairly do we treat our employees? Again, mostly positive results, extremely fairly, moderately fairly, and only a handful of negative responses there, so overall positive. This was interesting considering our spring survey, but again, good for us to see. How did you feel your overall total compensation package was compared to other districts? Most said it was extremely, very, or moderately fair. So they certainly weren't leaving for the money, so that's good to know, good to see in our exit interview. And then overall, how good or bad was your experience? And again, most reported having a very good experience while being here with the district. That was our exit interview data. And now we'll move on to our compensation plan update. So this is an update on our annual portfolio process that we do with our licensed education staff. Again, just to remind you, this is licensed educators can earn additional strategic compensation by submitting to us a portfolio, and that portfolio basically asks them to detail the leadership that they're engaged in, the collaboration that they're engaged in, the professional growth and learning, at least 16 additional hours outside of the workday each year of professional growth that they're engaging in, and how they're utilizing that and sharing it and implementing it. It's also a huge chunk of the portfolio process this year, weighted probably the most heavily is going to be their evaluation and their growth goal for their classroom. And then the second highest category in the portfolio that we score out is student growth data. So they need to show that at least 70% or more of their students in their classroom are showing growth from fall to spring in 3 different data points. And they have to do that for each year. So this year we had 60 total submissions, so this is up from previous years. And 66% of those who are eligible, teachers who are eligible, are in their, they're evaluated, they're scored out every 3 years under the educator effectiveness model. And so when they're in their 3rd year, in their scoring year every 3 years, they can participate in this process. So 66% of those in their eligibility year participated, and you can kind of see the breakdown between who submitted from which schools. And then of those who submitted, 85% did earn the highest level of compensation, followed by 10% for the mid-level and 5% for the lowest level of compensation. And then we like to give you all a preview of the things that we're working on to continue to keep our retention rate high and our turnover rate very low. So we are continuing to look at our annual evaluation process and our compensation model structure. They do really tie hand in hand. So we're, again, continuing to explore models in our state, outside of our state, kind of from looking at best practices across the nation that also result in student growth. And then we did finish over the summer local compensation analysis. And again, the analysis is based on data from last year. It's from 2022, 23, because that's what's public right now. So we completed that process and, kind of took a look at our internal comps and are starting to put together a plan for what we want to do with that data, with that information, and making recommendations around compensation going forward. And then we are researching, looking at our base pay for educators, comparing our base rate to the locals, to Waukesha County in particular, and just to make sure that we are staying on top of it. Working with our consulting group, we're looking at our benefits again and potentially looking at an update to our benefit strategy to continue on the path that we are of keeping our costs down and keeping it relatively low, not having our rates go up, but also providing high-quality benefits to our employees to attract them and keep them. We're continuing to look at our retirement plan that we offer and what's kind of going on in the market with regards to retirement benefits. We have pulse surveys. Pulse surveys are different from our annual survey. They're just a couple questions that we'll throw out to staff during the year to, keep a pulse on our population and see what's going well and what things we maybe need to address right away in the moment. And then we'll also continue to survey our new hires with a 30 and a 90-day follow-up, and then they also participate in that end of the year survey. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a couple. First one is the exit interviews. Does that go to staff and educators that we've chosen not to renew?
It goes to everybody. Yep, everybody who has left the district.
Okay. That kind of keeps a little bit of
A balance.
a balance in my mind. The other thing is you're talking about looking at annual local compensation analysis. Is it possible to get a presentation before this board? It can go before the personnel committee first, if that's fine, but I would just like to see something like that coming
Yeah, we can absolutely
in the
pull that
future.
together.
So before I would ever look at approving any more
Certainly.
funding. So, thank you.
All right.
Anyone else?
Do we have any data on, non-voluntary termination?
We do.
Can we get that in comparison from this? I'm just curious what that trend looks like.
Yeah, I don't have it off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
I can definitely get that too. Yes, we do keep track of that.
If you
We
can,
usually pull up the
I mean, you got a
volunteers.
10-year or what, 7-year? You
Yeah.
don't have to go back as far.
I can
but
go back
whatever
at
you-
least 5.
Okay, that'd be good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Next, we have discuss approve the Doxa Academy Transportation.
Yeah, so we actually are obligated to bring before the board any sort of parental agreements that we have for transportation with private schools within our district boundary. Patrick, can you talk a little bit more about this, please?
Sure. Anytime a new private or parochial school that is eligible for transportation within a district comes to the district, if they are going to request transportation through parent contracts, they have to submit this in writing, and they have to provide a estimated attendance area that needs to go before the Board of Education for approval. It is a formality. I did talk to DPI about this particular academy, which is actually meeting at, I can't remember the name of the church just down the street here on Sunny Slope.
I think is it Weatherstone Church?
Woodridge, yes.
Or Woodridge, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're using that, they're not part of that church, but they're using that facility as a location for their school. So what we're looking for tonight, everything is in order. I did review it with DPI, and they agreed everything was in order, so we're presenting it to you tonight for your approval.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Mr. Kurth to approve the transportation, is that an agreement? I'm sorry, what's it
Yes.
called? Yeah, the transportation agreement. Is there any discussion? Then all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Then we have an action on item discussed in closed session.
I move to approve the employment, performance, and compensation matters pertaining to staff as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Seidel to approve. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Now we have our future meetings and dates. Board meetings are generally held the second and fourth Mondays, beginning at 7:00 PM in Conference Room E, which is here at District Office unless noted otherwise. So September 25th, there won't be a regular meeting. However, there is the annual meeting and budget hearing that night. In that case, it's going to be in the Eisenhower Commons. And then October 11th is a regular meeting. That is a Wednesday, though, due to no school on Monday, the October 9th. And then after that, October 23rd.
President Scholes, as a matter of order, we did, there was a motion to approve was it the minutes of August, I think you mentioned the 28th?
It should be the 28th, and I think you said the 14th.
Oh, you're in trouble.
Well, wait a minute. Oh, okay, yes, I did have the wrong date. So should we redo this?
Please, thank you.
Technically, do I need to, we need to amend it because we already voted?
I'll make a motion to amend the original motion to approve the consent agenda, moving the approval of board meeting to August 28th.
So I have a motion by Mr. Seidel and a second by Mr. Kurth to amend our previous motion. Any discussion? And all those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. Okay, so now we can adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Kurth and a second by Mr. Helmer to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion passes. This meeting is adjourned.